Hello and happy Find a Book Friday. For this week's session of Find a Book Friday, I actually am pulling out my brand new illustrated Harry Potter book that I have received. I actually have number 2 and number 3. Number 1 is back ordered and having a while to get to me, but that's okay. I'm excited to have them and excited that they are illustrating these beautiful, beautiful books so that children of all ages can enjoy them. But the reason I chose this book today, and I'm not reading you the whole thing by any means, I'm actually reading you part of chapter 13 in what is the second book in the series, so Harry Potter, the Chamber of Secrets. And the reason that I'm picking this part in chapter 13 is because it is talking about Valentine's Day, and Valentine's Day is coming up next week, so I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day. And in celebration of love and excitement and all the things that come with Valentine's Day, I'm going to read you a little Valentine's perspective from Harry Potter. Because this book does not have illustrations on every page, I'm going to just keep it down and read it normally and then show you the pictures when I come to them. If you have not seen these illustrated books, please go to your nearest Barnes & Nobles or go to Amazon and look through the book or whatever just to see some of the amazing artwork that has been done through the illustrator, which is Jim Kay. So, to get started. You know what the school needs now is a morale booster. Wash away the memories of last term. I won't say any more just now, but I think I know just the thing. He tapped his nose again and strode off. Lockhart's idea of a morale booster became clear at breakfast time on February the 14th. Harry hadn't had much sleep because of a late-running Quidditch practice the night before, and he hurried down to the Great Hall slightly late. He thought, for a moment, that he'd walked through the wrong doors. The walls were all covered with large, lurid pink flowers. Worse still, heart-shaped confetti was falling from the pale blue ceiling. Harry went over to the Gryffindor table, where Ron was sitting looking sickened, and Hermione seemed to have come over rather giggly. "What's going on?" Harry asked them, sitting down and wiping confetti off his bacon. Ron pointed to the teacher's table, apparently too disgusted to speak. Lockhart, wearing lurid pink robes to match the decorations, was waving for silence. The teachers on either side of him were looking stony-faced. From where he sat, Harry could see a muscle going in Professor McGonagall's cheek. Snape looked as though someone had just fed him a large beaker of Skelegro. "Happy Valentine's Day!" Lockhart shouted. "And may I thank the 46 people who have so far sent me cards. Yes, I have taken the liberty of arranging this little surprise for you all, and it doesn't end here." Lockhart clapped his hands, and through the doors to the entrance hall marched a dozen surly-looking dwarfs. Not just any dwarfs, however. Lockhart had them all wearing golden wings and carrying harps. Now I'm going to keep reading, but this is the illustration for this section. "My friendly card-carrying cupids," beamed Lockhart. "They will be roving around the school today delivering your valentines, and the fun doesn't stop there. I'm sure my colleagues will want to enter into the spirit of the occasion. Why not ask Professor Snape to show you how to whip up a love potion? And while you're at it, Professor Flitwick knows more about entrancing enchantments than any wizard I've ever met, that sly old dog." Professor Flitwick buried his face in his hands. Snape was looking as though the first person to ask him for a love potion would be force-fed poison. "Please, Hermione, tell me you weren't one of the 46, said Ron, as they left the Great Hall for their first lesson. Hermione suddenly became very interested in searching her bag for her timetable and didn't answer. All day long, the dwarfs kept barging into their classes to deliver valentines, to the annoyance of the teachers. And late that afternoon, as the Gryffindors were walking upstairs for charms, one of them caught up with Harry. "Oh, you, Harry Potter!" shouted a particularly grim-looking dwarf, elbowing people out of the way to get to Harry. Hot all over at the thought of being given a valentine in front of a crew of first years, which happened to include Ginny Weasley, Harry tried to escape. The dwarf, however, cut his way through the crowd by kicking people's shins, and reached him before he'd gone 2 paces. "I've got a musical message to deliver to Harry Potter, in person," he said, twanging his harp in a threatening sort of way. "Not here," Harry hissed, trying to escape. "Stay still," grunted the dwarf, grabbing hold of Harry's bag and pulling him back. "Let me go," Harry snarled, tugging. With a loud ripping noise, his bag split in 2. His books, wands, parchment, and quill spilled onto the floor, and his ink bottle smashed over the lot. Harry, scrambling around, trying to pick it all up before the dwarf started singing, causing something of a holdup in the corridor. "What's going on here?" came the cold, drawling voice of Draco Malfoy. Harry started stuffing everything feverishly into his ripped bag, desperate to get away before Malfoy could hear his musical Valentine. "What's all this commotion?" said another familiar voice as Percy Weasley arrived. Losing his head, Harry tried to make a run for it, but the dwarf seized him around the knees and brought him crashing to the floor. "Right," he said, sitting on Harry's ankles. "Here is your singing Valentine. His eyes are as green as a fresh pickled toad. His hair is as dark as a blackboard. I wish he was mine, he's really divine, the hero who conquered the Dark Lord." Harry would have given all the gold and Gringotts to evaporate on the spot. Trying valiantly to laugh along with everyone else, he got up, his feet numb from the weight of the dwarf, as Percy Weasley did his best to disperse the crowd, some of whom were crying with mirth. "Off you go, off you go. The bell rang 5 minutes ago. Off to class now," he said, shooing some of the younger students away. "And you, Malfoy." Harry, glancing over, saw Malfoy stoop and snatch up something. Leering, he showed it to Crabbe and Goyle, and Harry realized that he had gotten Riddle's diary. "Give that back," said Harry quietly. "Wonder what Potter's written in this," said Malfoy, who obviously hadn't noticed the year on the cover and thought he had Harry's own diary. A hush fell over the onlookers. Ginny was staring from the diary to Harry, looking terrified. "Hand it over, Malfoy," said Percy sternly. "When I've had a look," said Malfoy, waving the diary tauntingly at Harry. Percy said, "As a school prefect," but Harry had lost his temper. He pulled out his wand and shouted, "Expelliarmus!" And just as Snape had disarmed Lockhart, so Malfoy found the diary shooting out of his hand into the air. Ron, grinning broadly, caught it. "Harry," said Percy loudly, "no magic in the corridors. I'll have to report this, you know." But Harry didn't care. He'd got one over on Malfoy, and that was worth 5 points from Gryffindor any day. Malfoy was looking furious, and as Ginny passed him to enter her classroom, he yelled spitefully after her, "I don't think Potter liked your Valentine much." Ginny covered her face with her hands and ran into class. Snarling, Ron pulled out his wand too, but Harry pulled him away. Ron didn't need to spend the whole of Charms belching slugs. It wasn't until they had reached Professor Flitwick's class that Harry noticed something rather odd about Riddle's diary. All the other books were drenched in scarlet ink. The diary, however, was as clean as it had been before the ink bottle had smashed all over it. He tried to point this out to Ron, but Ron was having trouble with his wand again. Large purple bubbles were blossoming out of the end, and he wasn't much interested in anything else. Harry went to bed before anyone else in his dormitory that night. This was partly because he didn't think he could stand Fred and George singing "His eyes are as green as a fresh pickled toad" one more time, and partly because he wanted to examine Riddle's diary again, and knew that Ron thought he was wasting his time. So here's just some more illustrations. And I'm not going to continue to read because that's kind of the end of the Valentine portion. And if you have not read The Chamber of Secrets, I highly recommend it. Read the first one first if you have not read the first book in the series. But This book is beautiful. The illustrations are beautiful. And it's definitely worth your time to look into all of the pieces of Harry Potter. And it reminds me, as I think of one of my favorite things about Harry Potter, there are so many that I like, but Alan Rickman, who actually played Snape in the Harry Potter movies, who passed away recently, was quoted basically saying that in his life, you know, Harry Potter was so amazing, such a huge part of his life, that he fully expected when he was 80 to be sitting in a rocking chair reading Harry Potter, and his grandkids would come in and say, "Really, Grandpa, again?" And you know, he made many comments about how always, meaning I will always be reading Harry Potter. And Harry Potter is just one of those books that, yes, no matter how many times you read it, you can always read it more because you catch new things. So enjoy Harry Potter, the Valentine's portion. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.